Stop moving in frank to start moving in motion. Cause it can't be planned, it can't be your forces. Have a force that could move a whole body of oceans. So wear every single denim cotton that you're closed with.
Hello, and welcome to Kindred Conversations, Living Black in Lowell. I'm Maritza Grooms.
Masada Jones.
And our
There we
special
go.
guest. Yeah.
Needs no introduction. But Vladimir Soldana.
Yes, welcome, Vlad. Thanks for being on the show today.
Thank you guys for having me.
Of course.
I'd love to be here with these ladies.
Of course. Well, we really wanted to have you on the show. We know that you identify as Black, but you are Dominican. And I want to know, like, how did that come about for you? I feel like in high school, if I would have called any of, like, the Dominican brothers Black, they would have been upset. So, like, how did that come about for you?
We're just gonna.
Oh yeah, we're diving
Okay,
right
I was about to say, I thought it would be a little softening the ice. That's a really interesting question. It's a first great question. I guess it happened through experiences. And even till today, when asked about my identity and how I identify myself, I struggle because as a Black Latino living in America, you really see how different you are in comparison to the other Black groups because my culture is Dominican, right? That's what I say. Like, my culture is Dominican. I eat rice and beans, although I stopped eating meat recently, but I eat rice and meat, right? Beans. I identify as a Black man, but when asked about Black struggle, sometimes get confused if they're meaning my like heritage as slavery, like so my ancestry, were they slave, and do I come from a lineage of like, plantation worker in the South? Like, I know, because that's not what I know.
Right.
That's not the knowledge that was passed on from my heritage generations and stuff. But what I do know is that my skin color is Black.
Right.
And to the eyes of folks outside of me, I am a Black man. So I have to be a Black man. But it still puzzles me, try to figure it out, like, how do I speak about from the experience of a Dominican man, Dominican culture, in a Black skin, living in America, right? It's already confusing enough to some folks, and I'm still working on how to articulate that, that I do myself identify as Black man, but I don't want to offend anybody that is Black to say, well, you're not technically Black, you're just, you're just a dark-skinned man.
And do you identify as Afro-Latino?
And that's why more in line with my identifications, like Afro-Latino, that is African ancestry in the Dominican Republic, which is what gives me my, pigmentation and this feature that I have, but in the context of America, when you say Black man, they always tied it to like, oh, okay, so you have family from the South, and your family was.
But that's also because I think that when we speak about Blackness, we also think that it's like a monolith, so that like everybody's Black story is different. Both Maritza and I, being Black women, it's still very different, and I think that it's also being comfortable in speaking to your personal story rather than like, oh, this is a story of many. Like no, like all of our personal narratives are going to be different.
Exactly.
And even just how we arrived at our Blackness even is different. And when I think of Blackness, I always think of the diaspora, just in general. So I feel like the Dominican Republic is a part of the diaspora, and so I would consider you a Black man, like.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I totally identify with that. Like it took years, and it's still shaping. I can't say that it's still evolving.
And I'm sure like what other people, like you said, how other people perceive like that, sadly comes to play into our narratives because we're like, oh, what is it? But is this person going to get this?
Exactly. But you asked back to the question of like how I came about to identify myself like that. It wasn't at me. Now that I'm thinking about it and processing it, it wasn't me that identified.
It was like projected.
It was it was others that, I'll give you an example. I got stopped by the cops, right? Driving while black, technically. That's really it. Not that I didn't deserve to get pulled over because I was speeding. I won't say I was, but it has happened in another instance where I got pulled over for no reason. But this, for example, when I got the ticket, on the right corner, you know how they select, like they put your race. Yeah. He didn't ask me, but when I got the ticket, it said black. I was 17, and what I say, I was like, oh, okay, it took me a minute to register. I'm like, huh. To that point, I have never identified myself as a black man. Wow. I was like, I'm Dominican. I'm Dominican. Like, I'm like, because I didn't connect with black culture in America, because I didn't grow up in black culture in America, like the soul food, big barbecues, like that's what you obviously that's stereotype, right? That's not the reality, but that's a stereotype, and like that's a stereotype that I knew at that age, and then I was confused. I was like, oh wait, but he thought I was black, and then it just got, it was more evident as I got older that the outside world in America sees me as a black man, and then I started to self-reflect and really just embraced it, because I'm like, you know what, I am black. Like, why? And I also found the empowerment in identifying as black, because in my own culture, and I mean, I know you're also mixed, and you have a lot of Latinos friends. It still is a hot topic. Like, choosing to identify as a black man I have also received criticism from family members or like real close friends and networks that
What are some of the things they say?
That's a good question. So like, oh, you're not black though. You're Dominican. And I'm like, yes, but my skin is black. Sort of like not in a hateful, racist
just
connotation. Just like kind of like, but why would you think you're black? Like you like, for some people, especially Hispanic, black is what they see on TV, the stereotype that they see on TV, right? That's to them what black is. Right. So I think it's going to take some time until we educate.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And I do like that I'm seeing more of an influx of people identifying as Afro-Latino, and being men and women. Whereas, like, I feel like, again, when I was in high school, that would have never been the case. Even if they wanted, braids or whatever, like, they still would have been like, oh, but I'm black. I'm not. They would have never identified that way. So I really do enjoy seeing that, especially given this whole concept of race, right? So when you look at Hispanics, I say where. Like, that's not a we thing, but Hispanics aren't included in race, right? So it's like, white, Asian, black, and what's the other?
Indigenous.
Yeah. So like, when you're looking at that and you are, in Latinx, like, how do you identify? And I was surprised that I was sitting with a group, and there was largely Latinx folks, white, Asian, and black. And so they went around and they were like, how would you identify in terms solely of race? And a lot of the Latinx folks said white. And so for me, that was really surprising.
I have young people, the same thing. They're like more brown than I am, but their parents are telling them, no, you're Caucasian. Like, one girl said this to me on Friday, and I was like, okay, I can't tell you that your parents are wrong, but you do have melanin.
Right.
But that's also another point. It's like, if you look at Latin America as a continent, and you want to divide like the mix of races and people's identity is really complex in itself, because you can go to the island of the Dominican Republic and you do find Dominicans in my own family. I can show you some that are leaning more towards the Caucasian features, right? Than others in the islands that lean more towards, African features. And I think that's what makes it more complicated, right? When you have a little girl that she's evolving and growing, and she will come to terms and realize that, hey, I'm not actually looking at myself in the mirror, I'm not Caucasian. I don't have those features. I don't possess the hair texture and stuff.
Yeah.
And it takes some time because, I mean, if we go back in generations, right, to embrace your blackness and to embrace the African and Africanness in the islands or in Latin America.
Or anywhere.
Or anywhere.
Right.
But well, I'm talking about in the region, right? In the region, in the specific, like nobody wanted to online. It was always about improving and you marry up, like not marry up financially, but you line up,
you line up, right? Because you're kind of like, I don't want my kids to be darker than me.
And it wasn't towards that. This is the funky thing that happens in like Latin America. Like it wasn't based on racism, like we want to keep blacks underneath or we want to continue slavery. It was more about we want to escape poverty or other social construct that were being, that were being played out in the island. I'm talking about the island of the Dominican Republic specifically, right?
And so they're saying like the lighter skinned folks got
better exactly. Better social economics, better education, better treatment. But there wasn't also an active let's keep black like slaves. Because it didn't play out the same as America. That's what I think is more complex from what I remember in my history, right? And like the second thing, right? For example, like in DR, you could be dark, and they'll call you negrito, right? That word negrito, it's literally like blackish, right? Like that would be the translation, the direct translation, like blackish. And for a white person in the island or a light-skinned person in the island to call a black person negrito, it's a term of endearment. It's like it's like a cariño. It's like a
like an affection.
Like an effective.
Like when I call, my little chocolate drop, like something
exactly, something like that, right? Yeah. But imagine in America, a light-skinned person calling a dark-skinned man or woman blackish or come here, little blackish. Like they were like, oh, hold on,
chill out.
Like that is not an endearment. Like do not. And it's funny because I think about that. And I'm like. Why? And I have never heard anybody say, "Oh no, negrito is an offensive word in the island." No, negrito is like a good word. Right. I've never heard anybody
be offended by it.
Be offended by that word from a lighter skinned person. And it's a little different, right?
It's totally different. But I think that like and I think that like in here, in America, and I'm sure in other places, like there's just like the history behind the word, and I think that we have like the different contexts, like you know what I mean. So like with it being like, because even what's the word for black in Spanish?
Negro.
You're right. So like derived from that just being like the word for black is different than being like, oh yeah, this is just like as soon as you get off that ship, like we're putting power behind this word and this, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
So it's just a whole different setup. Like whereas that is the negro is the word for black, and
But now negro, you could use it as offensive, or you could. Oh. It all depends on the tone, and Latinos are very aggressive and tone effective in their speech, hands, and which I'm trying not to do.
I don't know what you're talking about.
But that the word negro now. It does depend on your tone a lot.
And people will take offense
depending on how it's coming out of your mouth. But negrito, I don't think I have ever heard anybody say negrito, but it's also means it is also because of the minimizing the ethos. So now
and do you find that with the ethos that's usually something that's just given to like children, like you say that to children, or no? Because isn't like that is like a ethos kind of like a children?
Nah, man.
So I usually think of like a little kid.
No.
Supposed to be, but it's also in.
It's like a loving.
Well, clearly I learned Spanish from school.
But in the Spanish language, ito has become a measurement not scientific measurement, but mathematics just became a norm to minimize everything every day.
Okay.
If you want coffee, un poquito. If you want, nobody knows what the measurement of poquito is. There isn't like a ruler that you can pull out and say what's poquito. Can you? But we say everything. Chiquito.
Okay.
But funny. The word is supposed to be like un chiquito, is like a little kid.
When I was little, they call me Maricita.
Yeah.
But now I'm Mari, big girl. No, just
Thank you.
Ignore me.
Yeah, no, but it's true. It's true. That's
I wanted to go back to something that you said, just the system, like I guess the systematic oppression in DR, right? And you were saying how it's different from America, but as I'm listening to you, it sounds pretty much the same. Like wanted to marry light, wanted to, because it's like an aspiration to whiteness. And it's like you said, it's not necessarily to say, oh, we want black people to stay down, but it's definitely like we don't want these struggles for our kids. So, like, what do you think about that? Like.
And I think that's the result of imperialism, right? Like it's different in colonization, but not the same as America. America was never a colony. Well, yes. Yeah. Actually, let me rephrase. It wasn't a colony in the same aspect as
like it wasn't colonized. Like somebody didn't take. I mean, we took over.
Yes,
right. Because there were people here.
There were people here. They're Native Americans, but right when look at the colonization of like the islands in Latin America, it was a lot different. It was run literally on a Anglo power structure, and you are native slaves, all of the above, or I mean all of the below, but we are never going to like settle here. We're not gonna live here.
This isn't home.
We're taking over. We're exploiting this island and taking all the resources and bouncing. Like, don't ever get this confused. As opposed to like I feel in America, Anglos came and settled here. Right, and like they were looking at this as opportunity and a new home. They came with a different, with a different
destiny.
right, and that brought a different. That brought different social issues. That the island,
a different type of oppression.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's what I was saying. Like when you look at the oppression and the systematic oppression in the island, it's a smaller percentage, but also because of maybe the population size and the economic, the economic of the country is also not as powerful. But there are a lot of similarities. I'm not going to disagree that there's a lot of similarities, and even it's very visual in like who runs the government and who are people in higher offices and who are the elected officials, like, and who's even to the bottomest level of like who's on TV. Like if you turn on the TV, even in a country like the Dominican Republic, and I'm not talking, and I'm micro. Viewing this like to the DR, but if you look at all Latin America, you turn on any channels here in the U.S. that are Latino, they pretty much look Anglo, just speaking Spanish. Right? Like you're like, well, is this really Latino? What the Latino representation looks like? So I do agree that it has similarity, but I'm talking about in the normal life of folks and regular life. I feel like it doesn't have the same tension as when I'm walking here in America. Like it doesn't feel the same. It doesn't feel the same when a cop pulls you over, and I'm terrified, right? A professional college graduate, I still get terrified if a cop gets behind me. In the island, I don't think anybody that's not doing anything illegal gets terrified when they see a cop. They see a cop and they see, oh, this guy is doing his job, or this woman is doing their job to protect civilian and citizen and to protect us against criminals. As opposed to, I feel like here, it has a different element, right?
And that's where that American perception of, I don't care what language you speak, you're black, comes into play, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. That's what I was going to add. I wonder if that difference is because we do have this this idea of race here, whereas other places in the world don't have that construct, the whole racial construct. So perhaps that's like different. That's different.
And that's probably.
But I haven't experienced. I haven't experienced. So I can't really speak. I can't speak to it.
No, and that's the thing. It's like it just has a different feeling to it. But the oppressive systems are still very similar. They have a lot of similar resemblance, and you're like,
But you always have to be careful with history because there might be similarities across the board, but you have to really identify like the root causes of each of those. And it's like, yeah, we might all be like dealing with similar issues, but these are different reasons.
Right.
Like, I don't know much about the history of DR. I know there's this guy Trujillo, right? That's a person that's like
he's a dictator. He was that's the bad guy.
I know.
No, he was a dictator. Well, it depends, right? Some people like dictatorship.
Right.
So bad and good is all depends on that, on the eyes of the beholder.
Again, my American perspective. Yeah.
But he's no, I can't say that he was good or bad. All I know is that he was a dictator. He did enact a lot of violence, especially people of color, especially because he wanted to whiten the whole country. He wanted the country to look more Anglo. These are history that was passed on from parents and family members and
folks
friends.
should still do their own
and
research.
I trust, exactly. But you know, what I do know based on what I've been told is that he wanted to whiten the country. Like there is, according to history, where he had just criminalized black people on small crimes and small, simple crimes, just so he can clean up and cleanse the country, and like to the point where he like apparently ordered all the commercial in the business industry to not project any dark skin or fair skin people. Like they had to look Anglo because he wanted to make sure that the country image out of the country in the world.
So they couldn't be like just fair skinned. Like they had to look
had to look Anglo. Like and I'm speaking from like my dad said like he remembers Billboard and stuff like just very, very light European women and men, and you're like, doesn't look like the average Dominican.
Right. Wow.
Well, I like what you said just now, and I think it'll be a great segue. It's not my DR, right? So what does your Lowell look like?
That's a good question, actually. What does my Lowell look like? You know, I've been living in Lowell since I was 10 years old, right? I moved to Lowell from the Dominican Republic, not speaking a word of English. And I say that because I still struggle with certain language words and certain grammar issues, and I'm proud of that. Like I don't have an issue with that because it's I think it's incredible that I'm able to have this conversation.
Native English speakers also struggle.
Right.
You're probably doing better than most.
So I moved to High Street. I moved to a section of the city that everybody knows that is not the best neighborhood in Lowell. It's right Lowell Belvedere, Lower Belvedere, Lower. Sure.
Lower.
No, it's what is. It's what is.
I know.
Yeah.
It's what is registered.
I'm just like, when did that come about? Like
I don't know, but I do know that I have lived in all the lower parts.
Yes, you and I both.
I have lived in the lower parts of the city. Technically speaking, I mean, technically and really.
Literally, that's what it's called. Yeah.
And you know, when I first growing up, like my circles were very black and brown, like just black and brown because that was what my neighborhood was, and a few Southeast Asians. So my friends from that, you know, from where I moved here, all look like or look and are from Lowell, so they are black and brown, right? That's because that's what was around my neighborhood. Those were my nearest neighbors. And you know, when you're a kid, you become friends with the kids in your neighborhood because they take the bus with you. You come out of school and you're hanging out in the neighborhood. Until this day, I'm close with some of them, and that's still my Lowell because those are my relationships and my friends from years and years. But it has expanded. I think my Lowell now looks a lot different than it looked back then, and it also looks different than some of my friends that are black and brown that decided to not have different networks, and not that they decided. For them, it became like they don't want me in those circles. They don't want me in those networks. I'm fine. I'm doing fine. My family and friends are here.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think you and I talked about this before, but it's like, I have friends that don't even know this LTC exists, right? They don't know what's accessible to them, but it's
not in tune with the community resources.
Yeah, but I don't know I don't want to blame them, because I also think that institutions and organizations need to do better at opening the doors and welcoming, the different, like, people that are in our community that just don't know. But my Lowell today, if you were, if to answer your question, it's a lot different than I would have imagined 10 years ago. And I have learned and met people and have been connected to circles and people that I never even knew existed in this community, or things that are going on that I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. That's Lowell, I guess. That's Lowell, but it's not my Lowell, but it's somebody's Lowell, and that's cool.
Yeah. I like that. It's not my Lowell, but it's somebody's Lowell. That's cool. Do you feel like that's how it is sometimes when you're maybe going to community events or just
absolutely? Think about Mill 5, right? Mill 5 is a cool spot. Won't knock it. I visit it. I frequently visit the place. But I can tell you, I have more than a handful of people that have never gone. I have told them to come. They're like, there's nothing there for me. What do you like? What's Mill 5? I'm like, oh, it's a coffee shop, and like, then there's this, just a bunch of cool stores. Like different.
I'm wondering, do you feel like you have to, in being part of Lowell and being in the many different spaces that you're in, if you feel like you have to have a bit of adaptability, or if you feel like you are kind of have to let go of something else to join in these spaces, or
can you show up authentically?
Yeah.
I always show up authentically. I have no shame in my authenticity, and my friends can tell you I'm not different Vlad in different circles. I'm the same Vladimir in those old Lowell kids that I grew up with. I'm the same Vlad there. I'm the same Vlad in any space I occupy, because for me, it's like, this is my home. This is my home, and you have to take me as I am. And
I feel that.
And this is just why. This is who I am. And if I go to this space and you don't want to accept me like this, that's fine. Because that's your space you created. And yes, if you welcome me and I feel welcome, I'm gonna stay. If not, I got my own people. I guess I don't want to say. And it's not in a negative way, but sort of like, I know
I'm good.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I'm good. I'm okay. I'm okay.
I do. Before we get ready to go, I do want to know, because we didn't talk about all the things that
I'm sorry.
We got a really great history.
Yeah, we did.
I think it's important.
I want to know, what would you like to say to other folks who may not decide to either like join, because we had talked about including the Latino population in the Kindred Project. What would you like folks to kind of know if they did decide to reach out to us, or the community at large, maybe the spaces that they don't always feel welcomed to? Like, what should we tell them? And I'm also asking because I think that there's still like Black people who don't do many a thing.
Yeah, and I think what happens with folks is, regardless of their race, is that they get tunnel vision on what they're supposed to do. Like, I work, and I take care of my kids, and then I go home and just do things at home. And I think for any race, regardless, it's just hard to pull people out and encourage them to come out when there's like things for social events or community building. I mean, I work for an organization that's community organizing, and we struggle, right, ourselves to get people in a very brown community, very Black and brown community, right, in Lawrence. It's the elements are all the same. Why people don't want to come out is, oh, I'm too busy. I don't got time. And I think to inspire folks, you really just have to build relationships.
Thank you so much for coming, Vlad, and sharing so much, because I think your perspective is super valuable, and just knowing, how America perceives things and just how your experience has been is really eye-opening, I think, for a lot of us. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. And thank you to all of you for tuning in to Kindred Conversations, Living Black and White.
My body and soul was a plan when you have no goal. Was a dream when your gray matter really takes toll. Like a feet when your shoes when you have no soles. Rocks to gold, riches no soul. Yeah, told myself that.